Buenos días para todos, es un gusto tenerlos aquí. Les damos la bienvenida a este conversatorio organizado por la Cámara de Comercio Italiana en alianza con el Instituto Boni e Inex Moda. Vamos a conversar acerca del Renacimiento en tiempos de crisis, el Made in Italy. Nuestra Cámara tiene como propósito fortalecer el conocimiento y la moda italiana, su legado, su trayectoria. Pero lo más importante es que compartamos las buenas prácticas, que seamos convergentes y que nazcan nuevas oportunidades de negocio entre los dos países. Así que esperamos que se inspiren con este espacio y que sigan participando en nuestras actividades. Agradecemos mucho el espacio y disponibilidad a nuestros aliados y le doy la bienvenida a Fiorenza Sarotto, líder del programa Business del Instituto Marangoni, y a Sebastián Díez, director de mercado. Siéntanse libre de hacer sus preguntas también en español. Muchas gracias.
Hola, muy buenos días para todos. Un saludo nuevamente a las casi 60 personas que se conectan ya. Un agradecimiento muy especial a la Cámara de Comercio Italiana. Fiorenza, welcome, bienvenida. Gracias por estar con nosotros.
Muchas gracias.
Quiero recordarles que Inexmoda viene generando una serie de ciclos de formación, de capacitación a través de webinars semanales. Esta semana en los webinars Inexmoda estamos hablando en temas de sostenibilidad y para hoy quisimos unirnos a esta iniciativa de la Cámara de Comercio Italiana para hablar de la marca Italia como país, dentro de sus países y dentro de su saber hacer. Parte de la sostenibilidad de las compañías está dada por la innovación y hoy Fiorenza nos va a hablar un poco sobre la innovación que trae esa marca que tan reconocida a nivel mundial, que es la marca Italia, y cómo la han potenciado y cuál es esa historia. Al final del conversatorio vamos a tener una sesión de preguntas. Quiero recordarle a todos que este conversatorio va a ser realizado en inglés por Fiorenza. Me corrigen de la cámara, por favor. Va a ser realizado en inglés. Al final de la presentación de Fiorenza, entonces estaré haciéndole las preguntas que ustedes nos estén haciendo a través del chat público, que recuerden pueden presionar el botón de chatear que está en la parte inferior y pueden dejar su pregunta públicamente, o también la pueden hacer a través del botón de preguntas y respuestas que está también en la barra inferior de comandos. Al final de la presentación estaremos conversando con Fiorenza, resolviendo sus inquietudes. Pueden hacer sus preguntas en inglés, en español, pero toda la conversación con ella se va a desarrollar en inglés. Este conversatorio también va a quedar grabado y va a estar mañana alojado en el canal de YouTube de o si lo quieren repetir, y va a estar también subtitulado. Y agradecerles nuevamente por conectarse, nuevamente Cámara de Comercio Italiana, muchas gracias por la invitación, contar con nosotros, a Fiorenza por tenerte, y sabemos que vamos a aprovechar mucho este contenido. Vale, Fiorenza, it's all yours, welcome.
Okay, it's sorry, but my Spanish is not muy bueno, so I'm going to talk in English, or in Italian I think is not the case. So I'm going to share my screen. Welcome, please interrupt me, then it will be more a session for question. I'm coming from Italy. I work for Istituto Marangoni, that is a fashion school that is very much close to companies and to different Italian brand. My role is to be the program leader, so I coordinate the master in fashion business. So the idea of today's presentation is to talk briefly about why we are always talking about made in Italy, and made in Italy seems to be very good in this moment, and a sort of magic word, and try to understand what's behind the success of Made in Italy, how this success was built, and especially in this time where everything seems to be put in discussion, I think that in Latin America, you are now facing what you faced a few weeks ago, that is the big peak of COVID, and so everybody's worried about this, how let's say the hard time and the challenges were really present, and just to understand how the companies, the brand, and the people can face this kind of issue and do something that is, let's say, really different from what is normally considered the normal period. So what I'm going to talk to you, it's a little bit, let's say, a sort of trip in the time. I'm going to talk to you about when the industry started in Italy and when the fashion became part of our heritage and world, because maybe is not obvious. You see what is now, but what's the past. Then we are going to talk about what at the beginning Italian company did that was just about exporting, and we will try to understand what was the big difference. So the capability of moving from an idea of producing to an idea of brand and what's behind the brand. To try to understand the key, let's say, possible mistake, but also the key factor of success that are, by the way, the one that are now company really working on during this new crisis. Okay, so let's start from a trip that starts somehow, let's say, 60 years ago. Italy, before the Second World War, so before the 50s, it was a poor country based on agricultural work. The most part of the most important employer was really the nature, because the most part of people were working in the field. And before the 50s, a lot of people were moving from Italy in other countries. I use the example of some facts. There were 9 million people leaving Italy because in Italy there was no work, because of the difficult, let's say, working condition, the difficult weather, and also for pandemic, because the most part of immigrants went out from Italy during the period of the last pandemic, that was what we call the influenza spagnola. Probably you heard about this. It's not the case if the Pope is called Bergoglio. The Pope is, the father was an Italian immigrant coming to Argentina because there was no work, and the old brother of my grandfather was doing exactly the same, moving from Piemonte to Argentina. And so people were living, and let's say it was really an underdevelopment country. What's changed? What's happening in the 50 and in the 60? It's what we called the Italian miracle, the boom. During this period, the most part of the brand that you know, that you see are, let's say, expressing the made in Italy were born. What we discover in this year, what we call the domestic market. So the Italian market, what's happening? It's happening that after the war, the people were moving from the fields to the cities. And so a lot of people to dress, a lot of people to feed, a lot of people to give instruction. And so it was also the age of urbanization, because people move from small places to big cities. Personally, I'm from Turin, and you can imagine that Turin, that was a city with 100,000 people, was transformed in a big city with close more than 1 million people, thanks to the fact that was Fiat, and so was the car. So there was the born of the factories. if you think about a lot of products that you know everywhere in the world were born in this moment. So if you see, it's a completely different story from the one of France that, for example, was already creating luxury product 200 years ago. So if we think about, I use some categories that are completely different. So I use Vespa, Nutella, Fiat 500, or the big industry of, let's say, home appliance, or Barilla, the food. The idea was we move from everything that is artisanal, is done for, let's say, in workshop, and then to become industrial production. And what about fashion in this year? Fashion in this year was really booming because before it was not industrial. Before it was something that was linked to the creativity, but was really not done in plant. So what's happened that was really the base? First of all, what we call the Industrial Revolution. You can imagine dressing the boomers. What does it mean? It means that all these people that before were going to living in a countryside and working to, let's say, take the rice, were suddenly needing living in city, going to the school, going to the office. So the idea was we need to have to transform and to produce something to dress them. And the fashion was one of the key employer, especially for female workers. Before it was normally that the idea was the housewife, not somebody that is working. And fashion become for this characteristic the type of work. And for example, a lot of companies were born. What is characteristic of Italy, and probably I think the one of you that are now traveling to Italy, for example, for work or go to the production district, they told me that also in Exmoda do this kind of mission. You are probably familiar with the concept of industrial district, and this is very Italian. What does it mean? It means that move in this period in specific region, there were created people that were capable and very good in producing and doing something that is very special. For example, in the market, the district of the shoes, or in Emilia Romagna, the district of knitwear. I'm saying that this is a result of the Industrial Revolution because this type of people before was used to work with, let's say, production of food, and so they were having a sort of manual capability. And I'm speaking about woman because in many cases was woman at home that doing this kind of manual work. Imagine Tuscany with leather good was very specialized in producing, let's say, product from cows. Or, for example, the district of Prato, where there are short fibers. The Lake Garda became the district for socks, and still now, a lot of the socks that are produced everywhere in the world were done there. Or Biella, the north of Italy, the production of precious fabrics. Umbria for cashmere. But this is what's really industrial. And the idea was we need to specialize, we need to become strong in production because Italy is booming and the internal market is very, very strong. Then the first crisis. What does it mean? It means that at a certain point, the domestic market was not anymore interesting. They went in crisis because once you have put in every house, let's say, a washing machine, you have dress everybody, you have a television, you have food in the in the kitchen, what to do? And do not forget that we move from the idea that there were 1 million babies born, that was until the 70s, to the idea that kids become much less. So it was a sort of big crisis. And in this big crisis, we have seen for the first time two different type of attitude. First of all, in this big crisis, there was the first, let's say, element of what will become the fashion business, because they were able to say, okay, we have not to think about, let's say, basic need. The need is not anymore, we have 1 million babies that go to the school every year, so we have to dress them, but much more to move about industry. And fashion is not about, let's say, covering people. It's about working on more sophisticated idea. And in this idea, management and also money become very, very important. It's not the case that the origin of the fashion business is in the years and can be considered with the first people that were called stilisti. I don't know if you ever heard this Italian name. What does it mean? That before there was or the creator or the tailor, and then or the plant where industrial production were born. The idea of these people, let's say Armani, Versace, Ferré, the first pioneer of this was about, we are going to do something that has the same quality and idea of the haute couture that is done manually by somebody, but is covering many people, and nothing to do with the idea of just producing products, but there is an idea of making this feasible. And in this moment, what we can say that we have seen completely two attitude in Italy in facing the crisis, because the main attitude was what we have to do, export, and then industrial crisis. What does it mean? We need to go to sell in other country, and on the other side, oh my God, we are not anymore a poor country, so people is paid a lot, we need the talent, we need management. So what does it mean? That our product become very expensive. And one of the risks was that doing this, it was impossible to compete in a global market if you are a country where you want to maintain quality and standard. And also the Italian company, one of the characteristics is that they were very small compared to the giant, and a little bit is our attitude, very independent, everybody to want to do everything that is different from the other one. We are not very good in, let's say, working together and collaborate, and this was a real disaster. Many companies were showing a strong creativity but a limited management. Do not forget that in this time, during this year between the 90s and 2000, a lot of Italian historical brand and reality were becoming part of what? Big conglomerate. What's Gucci was a bad company in terms of creativity, or Bottega Veneta, or Loro Piana? Not at all. But now these companies are not anymore Italian. They were both by the French conglomerate, because they were very strong in terms of creativity, but not able to manage, not able to compete. What was different, the attitude from the other one, was really this one. So my first point that I want to share with you is to avoid the mistake done by many companies during this year, and still a sort of risk that it's always present in the Italian mentality, and I think very common. One of the mistake is the culture of export, the lack of marketing. Think just about the volume. Doing this, you are going to destroy your business. I use an example that is not fashion, but that I think it's very easy to understand. Normally, when we talk about wine in many markets, the idea is, oh, French are marvelous. In many countries, there is a shelf where you find Italian wine and Spanish wine and other wine, and then French wine, like the top. In the reality, one of the errors that was done by the company that initially they were deciding, okay, we need to sell a lot of wine in international markets. So what you are going to do? We are going to do low price and sell everywhere there are, for example, our immigrants. I use this example because this type of packaging done by the Chianti, that is a fantastic Italian wine, was to do a big quantity to be put in low level restaurant just to sell a lot of volume. And now it's impossible to position anymore an Italian wine and a Chianti with a high level. And so one of the error is I just think about a lot of production, lack of marketing, only volume. Second mistake and difficult, a lack of understanding of the market. Is like when you go to the airport, there is not the international destination. So one of the error was now we have to start selling abroad. Where? Everywhere. This is impossible. You need to understand that working and developing a product in other countries require a deep understanding of individual market, a deep analysis. You cannot just start selling. And this part was one of the mistakes. They start, okay, let's start selling internationally and, for example, doing 10 trade fair. No, you have to be very focused. The third mistake was about delocalization, moving plants for reducing the cost. One of the big mistakes done by many companies in every industry in Italy was looking for producing in other countries. The result was this really destruction of the quality and the lack of real capability. So they were not able to anymore work on the, let's say, hands and real know-how that was in this famous district. So this was the third mistake, to get lower price, go in other countries. What was done by the brand that at the opposite were able? Sorry, I check. Oh, there is somebody asking for translation. Probably I'm seeing, I'm not able to speak Spanish, sorry. So, but there will be a moment that we can discuss. What was the difference done by the company that were really winning? So if we talk about fashion, when I talk about the brand, what's the, let's say, the magic receipt to avoid this? I would summarize with, in general, some attitude that was really entrepreneurial. In this general landscape, some entrepreneur and designer were able to do something completely different. And since you gave this title that was Renacimiento, it was exactly how it was called. The idea of Rinascimento, the idea of a new renaissance. So instead of working on finding a low price product, was to find something that was when Italy was a protagonist, not just a place where people went to buy product for a low cost. And this attitude was really linked to few factors. First of all is branding culture. Second, deep understanding of individual marketing. So thinking before acting. Third, working on creating differentiation, not the low price. What does it mean, branding culture? Branding culture means the capability of doing something that is eternal. Have you been in Rome, maybe of you? Have you been in Rome, you have seen this SPQR. The meaning in Latin is Senatus Populusque Romano. This is the land of the government and the Roman people. So, as Italian, we say that the concept of brand was invented by the ancient Roman. How was invented? Because they were putting this carved in the marble everywhere. If you visit some places in Africa or in Asia, you find this. That was about saying, if you are here, you are citizen of the Roman Empire. So you are better. You are different. And so this is exactly the concept of brand invented. It's not a product or a logo, but it's something that is an emotional connection. It's something making different what you are doing. The brand is really what makes different a product, that build a relation. And a brand is forever. It's something that must last. So the brand is also defined as the sum of intangible value. And what the Italian brand were able to do is exactly to incorporate this and saying, we are not going to work on price. We are going to work in something that is really making the difference with what we want to do. So branding is not about quality. It's about perceived quality. Because if you insist just thinking, quality, first of all, quality is very subjective. Of course, everybody think, if I cook something, I feel that is high quality. But it's about, brand is not about myself. It's about other people. It's about the customer. It's about to be perceived. And this was really the jump that was done by this brand. How they did? First of all, all the let's say, luxury brand have something in common. So first of all, they did not say we are refusing our roots, but just the opposite. In the roots of the Italian brand, there is this idea of something that is very manual, because we are born poor. It's different because French, for example, they have the aristocracy. If you think about the French brand like Louis Vuitton, Hermes, it's true that is something that is manual, but the target was really, let's say, upper class. They have this idea of aristocracy. We have an idea of, let's say, manual worker, and this was not forgotten. But on the other side, Italy is a universe. One of the key common point that fashion have in common, for example, with food, is the idea of we have to understand that Italy is a small country, but not only there is 70% of the, let's say, cultural art heritage, but there is also a lot of tradition, a lot of kitchen. Imagine, if you have been in Italy, you have seen that you go in Venice and you eat bigoli. You go in Piemonte and you eat agnolotti. You go in Sicily, pasta con le sarde. Oh, but also if you go in a small village, you eat something that is different from the other one. Exactly, this was what was, let's say, taken in consideration by the Italian brand. You have to work deeply on our root, but our root is not just made in Italy, it's much deeper. It's something that is part of the heritage. And to be able to start storytelling the identity. So the idea was also moving from, we are in industrial district that it's about producing, to we can become a brand. And I'm going to give you some example, like imagine it's a sort of trip in Italy that move from the mountain to the south. Okay, so in different country. It's how all what they have in common, this brand. The brand that I'm talking are just example, are independent. What does it mean? That the owner, for example, the one that I'm showing that is Ermenegildo Zegna, the owner of Ermenegildo Zegna, the family name is still Zegna of the CEO. Is still an independent company. So we're not creating something that it's industrial and then was acquired by Monsieur Arnault or Monsieur Pinault, that are the French patron of fashion. It's still an idea. And Ermenegildo Zegna started his company more than 100 years ago in the Italian mountains, in Biella. It was an original, a district, but he's really created something that was moving from producing. The idea was, we are going to do something for our territories. We are going to build a company, a plant, a factory, a school, houses for the workers. And he bought a mountain, and then we are going to look for the best fabrics around the world. And so, for example, they are come to Latin America for Vigunia and this kind of products because they are impossible to find. But what we are going to do is something that is very specific for our territory. And they were able also to tell this. And if you go in the store, you find this idea of the mountains in the materials, in the fabrics, in what they do, the style. Then imagine Milan. Milan, if you ever been, is a place where is never very, let's say, the light is never very strong. It's the city of the fog. It's the city of Armani. Armani is normally saying the elegance is not to be noticed, but to be remembered. If you go around for Milan, you will find that all the ladies like me, they have a straight hair, not a lot of makeup, very discreet. Everything is very rational, and it's exactly what is available. And if you enter in a store of Armani, and it's the identity. The Armani building is this idea of rationalism, that it's a, let's say, architectural style, and the corporate museum is called Armani Silos. A silos is a place where you put raw materials. So this idea of is going to be part of this. It's a storytelling of a city that it's exactly the opposite if you go in Sicily. Sicily, you find a lot of, let's say, Mediterranean, light, and this is Dolce Gabbana. Sicilian, sartorial, sensual. This company was born after the 80s, so it was really a new company, and they were able to storytelling this idea of Sicily. That was the Baroque, that was the type of woman. You go and you see a fashion show of Armani and you see all blonde lady, very cold, very skinny. You see Dolce Gabbana and you see Mediterranean with a lot of, let's say, curvy, a lot of light, you enter in a store and you find the smell of citrus, because citrus has come from Sicily. Then another very beautiful story of a company that is, all this company has the owner that is still the founder, even if it's 100 years ago, like Ferragamo, that was moving from this idea of Tuscany as the land of the shoes and the leather good. That is true. That is part of our reality, the root. Let me do an example. If you have been in Florence, what's the specialty of Florence in terms of eating? Is the Fiorentina. That is a beefsteak. And the best beef is done with a type of cows that are called chianina, the same cows that are used to produce the shoes. So with this, he moved to Hollywood to create shoes for the celebrities of the movie industry. Then this is the most recent, I would say, that is the land of San Francisco. This is Brunello Cucinelli, another entrepreneur that moved from an industrial district, because Umbria, this is Umbria, the land of San Francisco is Umbria, is what we call the green earth of Italy, the central region with no sea. So it's a very specific territory, very beautiful beauty. He said, from an industrial district that was working with cashmere, let's say very manual, creating a brand that is traveling the world with the spirit of doing something that is very high. So moving from producing to doing something that is very high. I would say that this idea of moving for the brand, I put one because I think is the main point. Second point, study. Deep understanding of the different market, because there is not the export. The same market is not working for everybody. I'm going to give you 3 examples of different Italian companies, Italian brands that were able to export in different places based on their identity. Let's say Ermenegildo Zegna, they were producing formal menswear. And the key idea was 30 years ago saying, we are producing formal menswear. We give a lot of importance to fabrics. We want to do a very expensive product. We understand that the Western world is looking to, let's say, more informal, casual wear. Where is the place where still there will be millions of businessmen dressing formal? China. And they went to China 30 years ago. Giorgio Armani think my style, my identity is probably not suitable for places that are very show off. So the first market that they were aiming was Japan. Very straight, is not for curvy woman. Just the opposite of Intimissimi, that it's an important entrepreneur born on one of the district that was the district of socks, that's saying now Intimissimi, that is the Calzedonia group, is one of the biggest company in Italy in fashion. It's an house brand having Intimissimi, Tezenis and Calzedonia. And since they are working on underwear, they said probably starting from Italy, we are much more suitable for entering in Brazil, because the shape of the people is now the biggest country for them, Brazil. So there is not the right answer, but you have to have a deep understanding of this. And I can assure that this is one of the area, for example, where as Istituto Marangoni, we are giving more consultancy to the company, also the students. The company come to us for, let's say, company brief, and what they normally ask, please, to our international students, please help us in understanding the market, because there is a quantitative and qualitative understanding. And yesterday, when we discussed with Inex Moda, they told me that it's really exactly what they do, or what's the Colombian Chamber is doing. I work with a lot of other Camere di Commercio. It's exactly one of the key points. Do deep understanding of individual marketing. Third concept, very important. I know that is difficult in time of crisis. Keep the price. One of the key idea behind the Made in Italy is that the product that are selling more, that are the brand ambassador, they are costing a lot. let's think that when we talk about Vespa, when we talk about a Ferrari, and when we talk about the one that were able to export the wine, they were the one that were saying, this is going to be our price. So I use Gaia, that it's an entrepreneur that was able to say, we are going to become the most important wine producer. Is not because we are going to sell the Chianti with the Fiasco for low price. Exactly the same if you think about the Vespa, that is now the most sold scooter worldwide. And the price of a Vespa is really double. I'm not talking about Ferrari, because maybe Ferrari, you say it's for rich people because the absolute price is very high, but Vespa is for everybody. Now I have a Vespa, and when I go around in the world, I feel that, and I found a Vespa in a city, I found really proud of this. And I think to be proud, you need products that are high quality and brand ambassador. I want to live on this idea of keeping the price with the concept of skimming price, that during crisis period should really be very important. Skimming price was a word invented by the French that was saying, put a price that is very high compared to the category, because this will be perceived as something giving status. You are not going to dress everybody. You are not going to feed everybody. It's important that you trying to feed and dress and go with the people that will feel an added value in what you are doing. And this is exactly the concept that I would like to live. So, mistake, just to recap, the mistake are work on cost. The mistake is not understanding very well the real market, and then think that everything is the same. It's not the same. You need really to go in depth in what you are doing. Build the brand, start working in, give the time to understand very well, because sometimes there is the idea that now everything should be very fast. It's true that you have to be fast, but do not imagine that is about launching a lot of product and be fast. It's about doing the right thing. And this, I think, it's a little bit the learning that I would like to leave to you. I think I kept the time because you told me around 30 minutes. So, please, what do you think? There are questions?
Fiorenza, very
Tell me.
interesting. Nice meeting you. Very nice meeting you. Thank you for all the information. Are you done with the conference, or can we go on ahead with the questions from the
No,
audience?
you can talk with the question. I see.
Great.
One of the question, it's about what was the role of the government? Was the system active in this? I think, and what's the politician? I think that in general, let's say that despite a lot of word, I would say that in not many situations, the politician and the government was really helping. What was different was the role of the entrepreneur. So there were a lot of entrepreneurs that were really behaving in this. Now in Italy, and then some companies that were able to start working together and cooperate. So probably it's more the, let's say, a positive role of Camera di Commercio, Camera Moda, then the industrial support, then real big government support. What we have done, and every time you talk about what they are doing, is not a lot. Of course, some agreement with some nation was really supporting. For example, some role with China was important. The fact that they were removing removing some barrier. But let's say that Italy is done by many independent people with a very independent attitude.
Okay, Fiorenza, thank
Yes.
you for all the information. Don't worry about the Spanish. I'll be taking the questions for you. So
Okay.
don't you worry about the language, okay? I'll be taking the questions from the audience. I'll be translating directly to you. And I do want to take a few minutes to talk about all the information that you just gave us and maybe give out a few tips to all the people that are listening to this conversation, because I think the similarities between what the story or everything that's been going on in Italy is very similar to that story that's been happening in Colombia, not only for the past years, for decades almost. So I want to go back to your presentation because you gave out a lot of interesting tips based on the experience of Italy and what your country has gone through, which is very interesting. First of all, the concept of the Italy brand is not only about fashion. It also covers, other industries, which is pretty amazing to me. It's a very national, let's say, emotion and a very national passion about what you guys do. And it talks about fashion. Well,
I
it
would
impacts
say
fashion.
food
Yeah,
and
food is very
beverage.
important. Exactly. Automobile industry is also very impacted by the Italian, let's say, pride. How was this movement created? Was this, let's say, a national pride that started in a specific region? How did this start?
I would say that for food, for sure, because it was behind the movement of slow food. I think that the slow food movement was the one that was really moving and changing something. It was not governmental, and it started in Piemonte. So I would say that for the food, and it's not the case that, for example, the one that were able also to position the wine was, for example, Gaia, that is from Piemonte, with Barolo and this kind of stuff. And again, is from Piemonte. Also, if you think about Italy, it's a giant retailer now open in New York, Chicago, Shanghai, that was about local excellence. So the movement of slow food was born and was like this. While I would say that for Italy, on the opposite, everything was a little bit more orchestrated by Milan and the city of Milan, and also Camera Moda that is working from Milan, that was able to involve. The other phenomenon, it was about this part about the production district is very important, because normally each production district was able to do the jump, finding one entrepreneur. And this is not a case that I talk about. Biella, it's Zegna. Milano is Armani. Then I would say the district of Soc is Intimissimi. Then it was much more region based. Let's say Marche. Imagine Diego della Valle. They are the district of, let's say, the richest man of Italy is Leonardo Dal Vecchio, the owner of Lussottica, the district of eyewear in Veneto. It was more single entrepreneur in different districts that were able to create this.
That it's very interesting, Fiorenza, because everybody went back to their roots,
Yes.
created a story, and then went out there and told the story and sold it to the world, which takes us to your first, let's say, key item for a strategy, because we're talking about strategy for companies, not only for fashion companies, but for other industries. So let's go to your first key item, which is storytelling. I don't know if you're familiar with the Colombian market, but we have a very important high-end designer here in Colombia. Her name is Joana Ortiz. She sells abroad in Europe and the US in tailor-made houses, fashion houses. When a couple of years ago, actually, she was in our show Colombia Moda last year. And when we talked with Joana Ortiz about her strategy, talking about how her process was, she told us that the first thing she did when she was, let's say, restructuring her DNA, her brand DNA, was that she went back to the Colombian roots. She found items that made her unique, and then gave her own and sold it to the world. And that has been very, let's say, important, and has determined her success, in selling abroad. So let's go back to storytelling. You guys went back to your roots. You went to the regions, to the Mediterranean, and you went down to your roots. You gave it your own concept and sold it to the world. How can a brand communicate, let's say, a story that is so unique and so proper to the rest of the world, and make the rest of the world fall in love with that concept?
Okay, one of the key elements is to try to be disciplined, because one of the point in what is happening is that it seems very fragmented. So this point of the storytelling means that you need to keep a lot of consistency in what you are doing. That is not easy because it's very fragmented. So every piece of communication must be consistent. This is the reason why, for example, with the student, it's about you are working on the label, you are working on the logo. What's the meaning of the logo? Why you are using this color? Why you are using this post in the social media? Because the risk, especially nowadays, that you have so many activities, is when you grow up, you lose the control. And so it's become very difficult. And imagine it's exactly the same for us. Imagine bringing Sicilianity in a store. Another point, very important again, is retail. Do not think just in terms of product, but think about how you are going to sell these. So, for example, it's about working in all possible activity, for example, in retail. The example that I was doing, how can I bring this idea of Sicily in China? Probably using citrus in the point of sales, making sure that all my people are able to talk about this. It's exactly about the food. Imagine the concept of trackability, the concept of, let's say, uh, product life cycle. It's about understanding the root. And this is also back with the idea of sustainability, because otherwise the risk that become very superficial. It's become like, okay, it's biological, it's organic. It's about recovering this root and making the customer part of this. And again, social media play an important role, for example, in this. And what we have seen in the last year also, that it's about developing content. Let's say that again, one of the most important, if you think about the type of communication tool that are now more important, are the on media. There is a lot of corporate museum going around. A lot of things that I know, I tell when I do this kind of stuff, is because I visited a lot of corporate museum. The one of Ermenegildo Zegna, the one of Armani Silos. And it's about recovery, understanding, for example, and be able also to understand the roots of the product. So it's absolutely correct what you are doing, but it's important to be a little bit disciplined in building this, because it's much easier to pay and at a great advertising than having a strategy where every piece of content, like a fashion film, like a storytelling. If you see also the most important trend in social media, it's about showing the hands of the artisan that do something, showing the story. That was a little bit of technique that was used, for example, in wine, showing the face of the people that are really the people working on this, saying that behind a great wine there is an enologus, so a person that is it's exactly similar in this. Is it sometimes for fashion designer means saying that it's not just a piece of creativity, but it's a piece of culture, because only with this I'm going to pay and use this skimming price, because the Vespa is not going to be paid 4,000 euro instead of 100 euro of another, let's say, scooter. Is because it's a piece of history of Italy. It's not because it's worked well.
Exactly, and it's the entire concept behind the brand that you're selling. I mean, the product in terms of functionality can be exactly the same, but it's the story and the whole concept behind the product, the one that you're selling. Marcela Vargas from the audience right now is asking for the key factors of success. I wanna remind Marcela that the three key factors of success. Let's see, Fiorenza, if I learned. Let's see if I learned. 1, storytelling. 2, understanding the individual market. And 3, keeping the price.
Exactly.
Am I right?
Exactly.
Great. So those are the key items. Right now, we're talking about storytelling. I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on in the Colombian market. We have a lot of brands, and we have a lot of branding culture. You know, brands are very creative, and we have a lot of local brands that have earned a name in the Latin American market, and that are very well known for their quality and for, you know, their fitting and for the concept. However, we do have many other brands that consider themselves having a brand only because they have a label,
Yes,
or only because
absolutely.
they have a logo. You mentioned that before. I think, can you give out like some tips to the people that are listening to us right now? Because having a brand is not having a label or
Yes,
having a
exactly.
logo. It's about many other things.
It first of all, the brand, it's about having an emotional connection. So somebody that is saying what you are standing for. So it's not a logo, but it's about a relationship. This definition, I come from Disney. So it's a company that is absolutely not a fashion. And the definition of the brand is an emotional connection is the one that we used in Disney. It's about the fact that it's the moment, and the moment of the brand in Disney was when the kids are in the cinema, there is the castle, there is the light going out, and the kids say, oh, this for us was the moment of the brand. I think that everyone should think about what is saying, what's the moment of the brand. So it's not about thinking about ourselves. And sometimes one of the points is also to be critical, to be able to say, let's say if I take out the label from my product, from my store, is going, what's passing?
Mm-hmm. And I think it's very important. That's very important what you're mentioning, because it's about having obviously a product with characteristics that resemble your DNA and what you're trying to communicate. But you also have to think about the touch points where you're going to generate that wow moment. You know, it's either in your communication, it's either when you walk into a store, or when you try the product on. You know, you have to think about the touch points, if I'm understanding correctly.
Exactly. And in this moment where the touch point, even if you're a small brand, are very fragmented, it's really important to keep this consistency. So paradoxically, today, brand management is more important than before. And very often, brand management is really the idea of drawing a creative logo. And so, for example, it's about understanding very well the meaning. And another point that I think in this you are also working as is protecting, thinking about what is happening after. Because it's true, I'm not so familiar with Colombia, but I have been, for example, in Brazil. And what I was surprised that it's a lot of, let's say, Italian sounding. Brand never burned that are using Italian name, but they are just logo because probably your family was from Arezzo, for example. There is that I was saying, but this is not a brand. This is just a fact that but to build a brand today, you need to be very consistent and to have a long term, because the idea of opening their own brand seems very cool. And this again, it's a sort, at least in Italy, it's a sort of paradox between a parallel between fashion and food. If you ask the children what's the most desirable job in the future, now in Italy, the most part saying the chef or opening my own, launch my own company. It seems so easy because they think that everybody can become Carlo Cracco, but it's not true. There are a lot of people that have to, let's say, peel potatoes. It's exactly in the fashion. In fact, yes.
Part of the story, part of the, let's say, the perfection, the excellence, you know, the poise of the Italian brand, which is, you know, adjectives, or let's say characteristics, which describe the Italian brand around the world. Let's say that poise, that elegance, that sophistication, is driven by who made the product. The pride of having Italian hands make that product. We have Juan Carlos and Herrera from the audience right now. He's asking about sourcing in Italy. He's asking if you think that after the pandemic is over, the brands are going to quit sourcing in Asia and will go back to Italy, or how do you see sourcing with the
Yes,
brand?
today was one point of the premier in the speech that's saying we believe that after the pandemic we are going to ask for reshoring. So this trend, because what was happening in the 90s, it was continued that still some company went to source, but what is happening that many these company were failing because it's not about the cost. So it's going to be just the opposite. And what we are going to say now that is maybe can be useful, that we see that also international brand come for the sourcing in Italy. Let's say that Hermes, is now saying, is starting sourcing leather good in some Piemonte. Why? Because they said we are looking for the best leather good, and the best leather good is done with the best cow. Where is the place where you can eat the best cow? Piemonte. And so we are opening a sourcing. So it's going to be, we believe it's one also of the intention of the government, helping company in using the COVID to restart producing in Italy, the one that were delocalizing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Fiorenza, oh, go ahead.
no, I was saying, so the answer is definitely yes.
Okay. Fiorenza, we have Andres Saavedra from the audience right now asking, how do we create a made in Colombia brand? How can we replicate what you guys did so successfully around the world with Colombia? What are the main tips? I mean, we have 3 key points, which are storytelling, understanding individual markets, and keeping a price. But obviously you guys have one single concept that unifies all the brands and which is the base for the success for every brand around the world. What are the tips for let's say a Colombian market to go through?
I would say branding. I would say is not Colombian branding, but is individual branding, because again, also the learning was that every idea of building a made in Italy brand failed. There is not a made in Italy brand. Let's say that also in our communication strategy, normally the sourcing in Italy is just what we call a reason why for doing this. So it's not about the fact that you are so, it's about something that you are. So my personal suggestion is that, I don't know how you are, but in general, creating a made in Italy, also in Italy, there were, for example, during the Expo, the idea of doing the website is not about doing, let's say, made in Colombia, but it's about doing something that is based on what is the roots, the origin. And I think, again, if I think about Colombia, probably it's very different if you are talking about Cartagena, if we are talking about Bogota, if we are talking about, I don't know, the jungle or the sea. And so it's a little bit, think about, we have a potential. And this is exactly what, we are not a production country. We don't want to give to the international people just our hands, but something more. So try to work on brands and building a business model more than building a creation.
It's true, because many of the times when we think about nationalist campaigns, we tend to go to, let's say, the logo of the flag just on the label or on the packaging or on the windows of the store, but it's more than that. It's more than having the flag of your country stuck to your product. It's going back to your roots, creating a story around the roots. And, Italy, we're very similar in the sense that we're very diverse within our countries. We have different regions and we have different stories to tell. So we have many stories to go to that can make our brands unique. So if I'm understanding you, it's not about having the Colombian flag on a product saying it was made in Colombia. It's about going down to our roots and telling the story and creating a concept around the roots that'll make you unique against other brands of the world.
Exactly. It's like when you go, for example, we have not the idea of Italian restaurant, we don't like because there is not an Italian restaurant. As I'm from Piemonte, if I go to see the Italian, I do not like because if I want to eat pizza, for me, pizza is from Napoli. If it's exactly the same.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting, very, very interesting. And it's understanding the values, you know, the true values that you want to go back to and just taking them out there to your customer, you know, with the product, with the communication, with everything that's going through. I have one last question about storytelling. Do you think that this Made in Italy concept was created spontaneously? What I'm trying to say is that you think that all brands, you know, created their individual concepts, were very successful, and therefore the Italian brand merged, but it wasn't an intentioned movement.
In general, let's say the historical of branding saying that it was linked to the fact that some really entrepreneurs were able to believe in a dream. So the two pillars was on one side this idea of these people like Armani, Versace, Ferré, they were thinking we can think that fashion can become for everybody. So they were creating this idea can be industrial. On the other side, some entrepreneurs that were industrial people like Miroglio, like the one that were already producing fabrics, for example, or Missoni or other, that they put money on out of this. So it was something that was generated, or the same of Luxottica, from putting together entrepreneurial money, so not government money, and the dream of some people in a moment where, let's say, it was possible to create. But then the crisis was arriving. So the right attitude was the one that were able to export, because I think that the other point of really understanding the other market is a little bit a sort of polarity, understanding better ourselves and our route, and understanding also the other market. Because even if you are able to build a Colombian brand, very soon the Colombian market is going to be very strict. And you need to go in other country. And so it's important having this idea that it's about understanding a little bit what's happening in other countries.
What you're saying is closely related to what Maria Paula from the audience is asking right now. She's asking, how can we position a Colombian brand that works with endemic natural fibers as a premium brand in the international market? So I guess it goes back to the same idea we're trying to develop here. Go back to your roots, create a concept, understand the touch points of your brand with the customer, and try to understand how can you wow them. You can wow them through your product, you can wow them through your communication, through your distribution channels, etc. I think
and
it goes back to
last
this
point, since maybe it's interesting for this last point, is that can be also a business to business brand. Because, for example, if you are very strong with fabrics, you can use the case history is not Italian, but for example, we have company producing denim or producing fabrics that are becoming very, very important. But the point is not to, we are not the one that produce for low cost. We produce something that is exclusive. I think that, for example, you have a lot of sourcing that are really something that we don't have. Let's say that Mr. Xenia, when he said, I want the best fabric in the world, that it went and he bought lengths in Argentina because he needs Vigunia, cashmere, and this kind of thing that you need 6,000 meters. No, it's not something that we can find in the Alps.
Fiorenza, we have to start wrapping this conversation. I mean, we could talk on and on for the rest of the day, but we have to start wrapping up the conversation. So I want to go back to the last key idea for building a successful brand with let's say, the national values and all the storytelling that we're talking about. And it's keeping the price. We have a question from somebody in the audience that's asking, how can companies keep the price, maintain the price throughout difficult times? You know, pandemic is going on right now. Everybody's in their homes. You know, there's fast fashion, which is not new. You know, it's been going on for a while now. How have Italian brands kept the price in every market, despite the fact that we have pandemics and that we have fast fashion and everything that's going on in the market?
Okay. In general, there is not the magic answer, but one of the point is that sometimes is better give for free than discount. The second, so it's more entry. The second point is that unfortunately, I have been in the market for 30 years. If the price start go down, will never go up. So one of the point is since the beginning, be resist. So probably it's better to say at the beginning is going to be more difficult, but I'm going to find my niche. Because, for example, it's impossible to cope with machine like the one of Inditex of H&M. So I'm not going to sell to everybody. It's about choosing. That it's exactly the point of be a brand. I'm not going to cover everybody. I'm not going to be for everybody. But I need to find my market and position my price to the highest one that is for a certain number of customers. There is not the magic receipt, but one of the point is that is resist.
Yeah, we wish we could give the ABC of how to keep the price,
Exactly.
but it's
Now,
it's a matter.
I've seen another question that is in Italian that it's about how important is artisanal. Let's say that in Italy, in general, there is a coming back to artisanality, especially in terms of, let's say, working possibility. We believe that artisanal capability can be, for example, a very important resource for coming out from the crisis in terms of labor crisis, because we have also, as you have, a big point in terms of, let's say, unemployment. One of the activity to support the artisanality from our companies very often also working with the schools to come back to the idea that instead of being a terrible entrepreneur, is much better to be a good artisan. So to try to teach and keep alive these capabilities. For example, in the market, the district of shoes, there are schools dedicated, let's say high school, dedicated to teach to young people to use and to do. I think, again, this can be an important resource for fighting the unemployment.
That's very interesting. Fiorenza, just to wrap up the conversation, I promise this is the last question to let everybody go. The conversation is very interesting, and there's a lot of ideas that we can just bring to our reality, because despite the fact that it's Italy and it's a European country, you know, there are key aspects that every brand should go to when defining their strategy. So I want to go to the last question from Rachel Boada. She's asking something that for me is very controversial right now, and it's about the cycles of fashion. You know, a lot of fashion brands are shutting down their shows or their runways. They're changing the fashion cycles. What do you see in the market right now? How are these brands coping up with the change in the dynamics?
Okay, what we are seeing is that a lot of things were a sort of immediate reaction, because unfortunately, what happened in Italy, honestly, with the COVID was that it started before the crisis, because it started with the China. The fashion week, the fashion movement, the market is driven by China. So when discovered that the Chinese buyer were not coming, it was already a disaster, much before. So it was a sort of, let's say, let's start thinking, because probably what's happened is that industry, fashion especially in Milan, it's also an industry. If you think about the showroom, if you think about the agency, you think it's a real big business. So it's going probably to be, let's say, my personal opinion is that 80% is going to be very similar. Something is going to change in the sense that is going to be more, let's come back to the basic. So I think that again, in all these, probably the luxury will win more than the fast fashion. And the second point is that we are going to be back to an idea of retailer as an important point. This again is very controversial, but I think that I don't know if you are now close in the home like we are starting going out. There are two human attitudes. Some people will say, I want to go out and I will go to finally I will go to take a brioche cappuccino. It's going to be marvelous. And other people that we say, I discover a different way of thinking. The reason why companies are destroyed is that in reality is not that it's changing the e-commerce. It's not the fact that people are not anymore going. So it's going to change a little bit for sure in terms of touch point. Retail will become much more a communication tool, the physical retail, than a retailer, but is going to rethink a little bit the mix of tools more than just the production, because at the end the production is going to be, we are losing a season. Oh my God, it's not a tragic.
And it's actually pretty amazing, because what COVID has done is that it accelerated the process. I mean, this is not something new. I mean, the physical store is not a communication point just because COVID came to our lives.
Exactly.
You know, the physical point, the stores were already a communication point before COVID, and we are having, let's say, we're going towards an omni-channel model. You know, having all the channels blend together to have one single experience for the customer. So I think we're just gonna accelerate the process.
Is not changing in the fact that suddenly everybody is selling in e-commerce. Normally, I start the lessons with my students that are very young, asking which is, according to you, the percentage of e-commerce in the fashion industry nowadays, and the most part of them tell something like 80%. I answer, my God, it's not like this. Otherwise, they will not. It's less than 10%. And this 10% is done by giant company. So again, another learning is not about I create something creative, I put online, everybody can buy from everywhere in the world to my website in Colombia that I'm going to become the next Balenciaga. It's not like this. It's about building a consistent plan.
True. That's very true. Fiorenza, thank you so much for being with us today and the Inex Moda webinars. Thank you to the Italian Chamber of Commerce. I don't know if you have any final words before we say goodbye to everybody.
Okay. Thank you very much. I hope to invite me in Colombia next time. I really would like. I've never been. It's my dream. I read everything about Garcia Marquez, so it's my dream.
You have to come. You have to come. It's an amazing country, and there's a lot going on in fashion, so you definitely have to see it one day. A todos los que estuvieron conectados, quiero agradecerles por estar aquí con nosotros, agradecerle a la Cámara de Comercio Italiana por esta vinculación tan importante en las sesiones, en los ciclos de webinars de Inex Moda, a Fiorenza por habernos acompañado. Les recuerdo a todos que el sitio de colombiamoda.com ya está al aire para todos los que quieran participar como oferentes o expositores en la plataforma de negocios. Ya lo pueden hacer, ya se pueden empezar a inscribir. También en nuestro marketplace, donde van a poder vender a consumidor final. Entonces, para todas las marcas que nos están viendo, quieran vender al por mayor, exportación o a mayorista, ya la plataforma está disponible. Y para todas las marcas que quieran vender a consumidor final a través de una tienda Colombia Moda virtual que vamos a tener, ya está al aire también, así que ya se pueden empezar a inscribir. Y para las personas que quieran disfrutar del pabellón del conocimiento Inex Moda PB, las puestas en escena de moda y la nueva franja de entretenimiento, ya también está abierto el registro en www.colombiamoda.com. A todos, gracias. Los esperamos mañana a la misma hora para que sigamos hablando de sostenibilidad. Fiorenza, thank you so very much for having me.
Bye bye.
Grazie mille. Chao, chao.
Buenos días, ciao.
Gracias, Sebastián.
Grazie.
Gracias, que estés muy bien.
Arrivederci,
Chao,
buona
chao.
serata. Beh, buona serata per me. Ciao ciao.
Chao.